Today, there is a substantial amount of news emerging from the Donetsk region. The most intense clashes occurred on the northern side of Avdiivka. The Russian forces have adjusted their goal for the time being, setting aside the ambitious plan to encircle Avdiivka. Instead, they are focusing on enhancing their tactical position before launching another attack on the chemical plant. Russian commanders have come to realize that sending soldiers to attack the chemical plant would be futile as long as the critical firing point remains under Ukrainian control. This firing point enables the Ukrainians to eliminate Russian reinforcements as they deploy to the front line. In a previous update, I mentioned how the Russians adapted their plan on the move and attempted to assault the Ukrainian firing point from different directions. However, due to their limited forces, the attacks failed and resulted in the Russians losing more ground than they gained. In recent days, Russian forces have been regrouping as they prepare for their second attempt to attack the Ukrainian fortifications north of the chemical plant. Ukrainian fighters have reported that Russian personnel do not utilize any vehicles to transport themselves to the front line due to the vehicles' low survival rate. Hence, the personnel carriers transport their soldiers, at most, to the outskirts of Krasnohorivka. From there, the soldiers proceed on foot to their assigned positions. Additionally, Ukrainian fighters have noted that the Russians are amassing their forces in various tree lines, not limited to those near the front line. Recently published footage showcases Ukrainians targeting Russian shelters positioned amidst open fields. The Ukrainians typically wait for a fresh group of soldiers to gather before shelling the area with cluster munitions. This tactic forces the Russians out of their shelters to aid the wounded, further exposing them to Ukrainian fire. Although artillery and drone strikes hinder the accumulation of Russian forces, they are unable to entirely impede their efforts. Eventually, the Russian forces initiate their attack. This time, the Russians are exclusively focused on the most problematic region and determined to advance as deeply as possible to secure their supply lines. While the Ukrainians were prepared to confront multiple diversionary attacks along the line, the Russians deliberately left their flanks vulnerable to ensure overwhelming Ukrainian forces. This strategy proved successful, allowing the Russians to clear the initial portion of the tree line. The Ukrainian fighters resisted for an extended period, depleting their ammunition supplies faster than the Russians ran out of troops. Once the remaining 2 soldiers on their position depleted their ammunition, they chose to surrender. Regrettably, drone footage reveals that the Russians killed them after their surrender. Upon recognizing their comrades in the video, Ukrainian fighters from the 47th Mechanized Brigade declared their intent to storm the Russians, stating that they would not take any captives. Shortly afterward, Vitaly Barabash, the head of the Ukrainian Avdiivka military administration, declared the counterattack successful and claimed that all Russian soldiers were eliminated. While the Ukrainians launched a counterattack south of Stepov, the Russian forces decided to directly attack the settlement itself. Ukrainian fighters released a video demonstrating the coordination between artillery crews and the reconnaissance drone operator as they relentlessly decimated one Russian assault unit after another. With the thermal camera-equipped drone, all the white dots visible in the footage represent Russian soldiers. The video captures the culmination of the battle, showcasing the Russians fleeing in large numbers and without coordination from Stepov back into the tree line. Unfortunately for them, only a few managed to survive. The following morning, Ukrainian authorities dispatched a drone into the tree line to assess the situation, revealing numerous Russian bodies scattered throughout. All in all, the Russian endeavors to enhance their tactical position proved unsuccessful. Although initially, the Russian forces managed to breach the defensive position south of the village by overwhelming the Ukrainians with their substantial manpower until the Ukrainians ran out of ammunition, the exhausted and depleted Russian units ultimately lost all their positions to the first Ukrainian counterattack. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian defense in Stepov effectively prevented the Russians from securing a foothold.